My hands trembled as I pressed confirm to transfer $800 into Ethan's account. It was nearly half of my monthly income earned as a substitute teacher and a weekend janitor in Providence, Rhode Island. A soft notification sound rang out. I looked at my remaining balance, $91,263. That amount would have to last until the next payday. I winced, shifting my weight onto my left leg to ease the pressure on my right knee, which still throbbed from a fall on the school stairs just a few hours earlier. No one had stopped to help. I had simply gotten up on my own and dragged myself to the bus in the cold drizzle. At least they will have a warm Thanksgiving, I told myself, counting every coin to pay for the ride home. My small apartment sat on the third floor of an aging building, a place I had struggled to keep after Michael passed away 6 years ago. I hung my soaked coat on the hook, then immediately began preparing the meal. There were 16 hours left until Thanksgiving, but I did not feel tired. After 3 consecutive years of cancellations, Ethan and his family had finally agreed to come. I wanted everything to be perfect. I worked methodically in the cramped kitchen. I chopped onions for the stuffing, mashed potatoes, and prepared Michael's special cranberry sauce recipe, the one he used to make every year. I baked a pumpkin pie and made green bean casserole with crispy fried onions, the familiar dishes of an American Thanksgiving table. Every few minutes I glanced at my phone, half hoping, half fearing the usual cancellation message. By midnight, the pie had cooled. Everything was ready. The next morning, I woke up at 5 and placed the 20-pound turkey into the oven. I hummed old Christmas songs as I set the table with my finest china. A few plates were chipped, but they still carried a quiet elegance. I had even bought sparkling cider for my teenage grandchildren, Ava and Noah, children I barely knew anymore because they rarely visited. At 4:30 in the afternoon, when the turkey was golden brown and the house was filled with the scent of herbs, cinnamon, and baked goods, the phone rang. Ethan's name appeared. "Mom?" His voice carried that familiar tone, the one that always came before a refusal. My stomach tightened. "Mom, we cannot make it. Something came up. There is an important networking opportunity with Sophia's colleagues. We cannot miss it." I tried to keep my voice steady. "I understand." But even to myself, my voice sounded hollow. "We will reschedule. I promise." In the background, Sophia's voice rose, slightly muffled but still clear. "Tell her we have something important, honey. She always understands. She is always like that." Then came a soft laugh, unmistakable. "I am sorry, Mom. This opportunity could really help my career." "Of course," I replied automatically. "I understand." After the call ended, I stood frozen in my best holiday dress, surrounded by a table carefully prepared for ghosts. Mechanically, I began wrapping each dish in foil. This food would last me for weeks. As I placed the untouched pumpkin pie into the refrigerator, my phone buzzed with a new notification. With numb fingers, I opened Facebook and saw a post from Paul, a former colleague from my full-time teaching days. Caption: "The best Thanksgiving ever." The photos appeared. Ethan, Sophia, Ava, and Noah, all smiling brightly at an elegant party in a large seaside villa. They were dressed in formal attire, raising glasses of champagne in celebration. I zoomed in on Sophia's necklace, a sparkling diamond pendant likely worth 3 times the amount I sent them each month. Then I noticed the expensive watch on Ethan's wrist, something I had never seen before. They were enjoying a luxurious evening while I sat here alone with a cold dinner. I had transferred money I could not afford to spare. Money that forced me to work weekends, cleaning other people's homes in addition to substitute teaching. At 68, my body protested those extra hours with aches that kept me awake all night. I sank into a kitchen chair surrounded by untouched food in an apartment no one wanted to visit. The truth hit me with real weight. I was not just lonely. I was being used. Tears slipped quietly down my face as I looked at their radiant smiles on the screen, wondering when I had become invisible in the eyes of the son I had spent my entire life loving and sacrificing for. That Christmas came to me like a small flicker of hope in long, lonely days. After the shock of Thanksgiving, I told myself that maybe things could still be saved. I spent 3 full days decorating the apartment. I pulled out the old artificial tree from the closet, the one Michael and I had bought in our first year of marriage. Shimmering ornaments, tiny silver bells, and the stockings with Ethan's childhood name were all carefully hung. the scent of artificial pine mixed with cinnamon from scented candles, creating the familiar warmth of an American Christmas. I baked a batch of chocolate chip cookies, Ethan's favorite since childhood, the kind he once finished an entire tray of when he came home for the holidays. I wrapped modest gifts: a hand-knitted wool scarf for Ava, a small Lego set for Noah, a cheap cashmere sweater for Ethan and Sophia. I bought them with savings, even cutting back on my blood pressure medication to afford them. When the doorbell rang on the afternoon of December 24, my heart pounded like a young girl on her first date. They actually came. Ethan stepped in first, nodding in greeting. Sophia followed with a practiced polite smile. 17-year-old Ava blew a kiss on my cheek, her eyes already back on her phone. 15-year-old Noah mumbled, "Merry Christmas, Grandma," without looking up from his game. Neither grandchild reached for the gifts under the tree. "Merry Christmas, Mom," Ethan said, handing me a gift bag from a pharmacy with a simple label that read Mom in Sophia's handwriting. Sophia stepped inside and immediately wrinkled her nose. "The house smells strange." "Is that mothballs?" I smiled gently. "Just potpourri to create a Christmas atmosphere." She scoffed softly, glancing around the apartment with undisguised disdain, as if my small space was something outdated and unworthy. I had prepared prime rib roast served with mashed potatoes, gravy, and green bean casserole. But Sophia quickly cut in. "Oh, we already ate. We stopped by a great Italian restaurant on the way here." I swallowed my disappointment and kept smiling. "Then maybe some dessert." I made pumpkin pie and cookies. Throughout the evening, only I ate. They barely touched the desserts. I tried to talk about my teaching days, about a student who had overcome hardship with my help. Sophia interrupted immediately. "Kids learn very differently now. Those old methods are completely outdated. We just use apps and online tutors." Ethan sat silently, yielding entirely to his wife, no trace of the straightforward confidence I once admired in him. I turned to Ava. "Are you having trouble with algebra? I used to tutor math for many years. I could help." Ava glanced at her mother. Sophia answered instead, rolling her eyes dramatically. "No offense, but those ancient techniques do not match the current Common Core curriculum. We have hired an online tutor. Very expensive, but the best." I nodded, swallowing the response rising in my throat. Those ancient techniques had helped dozens of my students overcome difficulties and even get into college. The evening dragged on, broken by Sophia's sighs whenever I spoke and the constant tapping of Ava and Noah on their phones. Ethan checked his watch every few minutes, as if enduring a tedious obligation. In less than 90 minutes, they stood up to leave. Before going, Ethan pulled me into the kitchen corner and whispered, "Mom, we are really struggling financially. The economy is tough. We might lose our apartment. Can you increase your monthly support to $1,200? Just temporarily." His words hit my chest like a blow. I had been splitting my blood pressure pills to make them last, skipping lunch for days, working 3 jobs at once, substitute teaching, weekend cleaning, and selling handmade items online just to send them money. But I thought of Ava and Noah, of them having no home, and I nodded. "I will manage." Relief flooded Ethan's face. He squeezed my shoulder, the closest thing to affection I received that entire evening. "You are the best, Mom. We will pay you back." As their shiny sport utility vehicle disappeared into the Christmas night, I stood at the door watching. To send an extra $200 each month, I would have to take on another weekend cleaning job. At 68, my knees already protested every step. I closed the door against the biting cold of a New England winter, surrounded by half-eaten desserts and unopened gifts. At that moment, the truth pressed down on me like a lead blanket. I was no longer a mother, no longer a grandmother in their eyes. I was a breathing, automated teller machine, an endless source of money they could withdraw from whenever they wished. And I began to wonder, would there come a day when I would have nothing left for them to take? And when that day came, would they still be able to see me? In February of that year, on February 12th, I turned 68. I baked myself a tiny chocolate cake following the exact recipe Michael had made for me throughout 30 years of marriage. A single candle stood in the center. Its small flame trembled in the dim light of the kitchen. I sat there alone. No calls, no messages. I checked the mailbox 3 times, hoping for a card, even just a printed one. There was nothing. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered, cutting a slice of cake that I could not swallow. On the kitchen counter sat the old iPhone Ethan had once given me for emergencies. I rarely used it. Only occasionally I opened the family WhatsApp group he had created, supposedly to share photos of Ava and Noah. I had not posted anything for months. But tonight the loneliness was too heavy. I picked up the phone. Maybe even a late birthday wish would be enough. The chat showed a few new messages. The first photos were of Ava and Noah, smiling brightly at an expensive amusement park in Orlando, the kind where tickets cost hundreds of dollars per person. I zoomed in on their smiles, my finger gently sliding across the screen as if I could touch them. Suddenly the typing indicator appeared. Sophia was online. My heart pounded. Maybe it was a late birthday wish. The message appeared, each word cut into my skin like a blade. I just lied to that useless old woman that we cannot visit this weekend because Noah is sick. In reality, we are in Aspen. She just transferred another $1,000 to buy medicine. Laughing my head off. That is enough to cover the resort. Honestly, I cannot stand that smelly apartment and her repetitive stories anymore. Luckily, that idiot's money covers our rent and extras. Best thing is, she still thinks we are struggling, so she keeps funding our lifestyle. That fool believes everything. A string of laughing emojis followed. My hands shook violently. I waited, praying Ethan would defend his mother. Instead, my son replied immediately, "Haha, you are right, my love. Do not be too harsh on her. She is annoying with that needy behavior, but we still need her for now. Once we sell Dad's vacation house, the one she does not even know exists, we can stop this act. Until then, tolerating her emotional calls is worth it. It is like a tax-free $1,200 every month." Then another message appeared. Jessica Monroe, Sophia's colleague. "You two are terrible, but honestly, it is a smart strategy. Milk the old cow as long as she still gives milk." The phone slipped from my hand and hit the table with a sharp sound. My chest tightened so much I could barely breathe. I read it again and again, desperately searching for another meaning. There was none, no other meaning. My son, my only child, the baby I had nursed, the boy I had raised alone after Michael passed away, was mocking me in the family group chat. They had not only deceived me for 6 years, they had also hidden assets from me. A vacation house Michael had left behind. And more importantly, $750,000 in life insurance money that should have been half mine. The single candle on my birthday cake flickered, casting strange shadows across the kitchen. In that trembling light, I finally saw the truth of the past 6 years. Every canceled dinner, every contemptuous glance, every rushed visit. It was not carelessness. It was calculated contempt. I had been sending nearly half of my income to people who were laughing at my sacrifice, working 3 jobs, skipping meals, cutting my medication in half, while they were skiing in Aspen and buying expensive jewelry. The cruelest part was not the money. It was knowing that my own son, my own blood, saw me as nothing more than a cow to be milked, a useless old woman to be exploited until I had no value left. The candle went out. The kitchen fell into complete darkness, and in that moment a part of me died. The part that still believed, the part that still held on to a mother's love through decades of disappointment. What remained was something cold, something hard, but also something powerful, something I had never known before. I did not cry anymore. I just sat there in the dark, and for the first time in a long time, I understood clearly the game had changed. Now it was my turn. 2 weeks after that birthday night, I lived like a hollow shell. I still woke up early every morning. I still drove to school to substitute teach. I still cleaned other people's houses on weekends. I still transferred money to Ethan each month out of mechanical habit. But inside, a storm kept raging. I barely ate. I barely slept. My eyes sank deeper. My hair turned grayer, faster. Every time I stood up, my right knee cracked, as if it might break. I felt myself fading away little by little, like a candle burned down to its core. On Monday morning, February 26th, the clinic nurse called to remind me of my routine blood pressure check. I almost canceled. What was the point anymore? But a small instinct, a remaining sense of self-preservation held me back. I dragged myself to the clinic and sat waiting in the familiar hallway filled with the smell of disinfectant and the soft beeping of blood pressure machines. When Dr. Elena Ramirez measured my blood pressure, her face turned pale. 189 over 110, she said, her voice serious. Lauren, this is very dangerous. You are at high risk of a stroke. What is going on? I shook my head and tried to force a weak smile. But her kind eyes, the same eyes that had watched over my health for 20 years, did not let me hide. I have been your doctor since you were still teaching full-time. Tell me. Maybe it was her warm voice so different from Ethan's coldness. Maybe I was too exhausted to keep the secret any longer. I told her everything. The messages in the group chat. Being called a useless old woman and a cow to be milked. Discovering that Ethan and Sophia were living in luxury while I split my blood pressure pills in half just to send them money. By the time I finished, tears were already running down my face without me noticing. Dr. Ramirez sat in silence for a long moment, her hands pressed under her chin. Then she let out a deep sigh. Lauren, what I am about to say may go beyond professional boundaries, but I am worried about your life. She hesitated for a second. You know Caroline, my wife? She works at First National Bank in the same department as Sophia. My heart pounded. She continued, her voice reluctant but firm. Caroline says Sophia constantly brags about her new position and bonuses. According to Office Talk, her salary now exceeds $120,000 a year, and there is more. At the bank's Christmas party last year, someone congratulated Ethan on his new position at his brother-in-law's brokerage firm. Caroline remembers clearly because Sophia bragged that he had been working there for 8 months. 8 months. Exactly 8 months I had been sending extra money because of their so-called financial emergency. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the chair so hard my knuckles turned white. That cannot be true, I whispered. Dr. Ramirez looked straight into my eyes. Caroline is not someone who speaks carelessly. Lauren, how much have you sent them? Almost everything, I replied, my voice breaking. I clean houses on weekends just to pay rent. I split my medication. I skip meals to save money. Her face darkened. While they lie to you, those words pierced my heart like shards of glass. Dr. Ramirez wrote a prescription with unusual force, her pen nearly tearing the paper. This is your blood pressure medication. Take it properly. Do not split it anymore. And Lauren, she looked at me deeply, I am giving you another prescription that is not written here. Stop sending them money immediately. You cannot continue like this. You are killing yourself. As I stood up to leave, she added one final sentence. Caroline also said that last week Sophia bought a $3,000 handbag during her lunch break. I froze at the door. I remembered how last month I had fallen and could not afford a $30 taxi to the emergency room. I wore a cast on my wrist while my daughter-in-law carried a bag worth 100 times that amount. On the drive home, my mind spun. Every conversation from the past 6 years replayed, but now through the lens of truth, endless excuses, increasing demands, decreasing affection. When I parked in front of my building, something inside me had changed. The shock and pain were still there, but beside them was something unfamiliar, sharp, like a blade. I was not just angry. I was waking up. That evening I sat in front of my computer. My hands trembled slightly, but my resolve was firm. I canceled the automatic monthly transfer to Ethan without a single explanation. I opened my banking app and blocked all access from his phone number and devices. I left the family WhatsApp group, then blocked both Ethan and Sophia. For the first time in years, my phone was silent. I scrolled through my contacts and stopped at a name I had not called in a long time. Maggie Thompson. My best friend from college, the one Ethan had subtly persuaded me to cut off because she was a bad influence. My finger hovered over the call button, then pressed firmly. It rang 3 times. Maggie's voice came through, surprised but warm. Lauren, oh my God, is that really you? I thought you disappeared. Not disappeared, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. I was just lost for a while, but now I am finding my way back. The next afternoon, I went to the public library near my home, the place where I used to take Ethan to read when he was a child. I signed up for a free personal finance class for seniors. On my way out, I picked up a brochure about senior rights in Rhode Island. That evening, I sat down and updated my resume. I applied for a full-time teaching position at a private school in Providence with a salary 50% higher than substitute teaching. When I turned off the lights and went to bed for the first time in months, I no longer felt like a victim. I felt like I was taking back control, and I knew the road ahead would not be easy, but at least it would be my road. 3 weeks after I stopped sending money, Ethan showed up at my door on a cold, drizzling Friday evening in March in Providence. The doorbell rang again and again, forceful as if he were pounding on the door instead of pressing it. I looked through the peephole. My son stood there, his face flushed with anger, his coat soaked, his hand gripping his phone like a weapon. I took a deep breath, straightened my back, and opened the door. Ethan did not wait to be invited. He pushed past me and stepped inside, his voice low and aggressive. "What the hell is going on, Mom? The money did not arrive this month. We have bills to pay. The rent is about to be late." I closed the door gently and watched him as if he were a stranger. Ethan, the child I once held in my arms, the boy whose tears I wiped every time he fell off his bicycle, now paced back and forth in my small living room like a wounded animal. The expensive watch on his wrist flashed under the light every time he raised his hand in anger. I have been calling and texting for weeks. Emma needs money for extracurricular activities. Noah has an orthodontist appointment coming up. "What are you doing? Are you abandoning your family when we need you the most?" I noticed it immediately. He did not ask a single question about my health. He did not ask if I was okay, if I was sick, if I needed anything. The questions a loving son would ask when his mother suddenly went silent. Only money. Only his needs. I calmly sat down in the armchair, the one I had bought at a thrift store the week before my first non-essential purchase in years. "I am having some financial difficulties," I said, my voice steady. "I need to focus on my own expenses first." Ethan narrowed his eyes, his voice rising. "Financial difficulties. What do you mean? You have always managed before. You know we are family. We depend on that money." I looked straight into his eyes, eyes that had once been clear and trusting when he was a child. Now they held only calculation and anger. I gave a small smile, my voice still calm. "How is your job?" Ethan flinched, then quickly answered. "What job? You know, I have just been doing temporary work since I got laid off." I tilted my head, still smiling. "I mean your position at your brother-in-law's brokerage firm, Bennett and Associates. You have been working there for 8 months, have you not?" The blood drained from Ethan's face so quickly that I almost thought he might collapse. He froze. His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in his life, my son had no lie ready. Who told you?" he whispered, his voice shaking. "Does it matter?" I replied. "What matters is that you have been lying to me for years. Why does my son need financial support while owning 2 properties and going on ski vacations? Or why does my daughter-in-law wear a new diamond pendant while telling me you cannot afford food?" Ethan tried to recover his voice, turning angry. Again. "Are you spying on me, hiring investigators? This is crazy, Mom. You do not understand anything." I remained seated, completely unmoved. "I understand very clearly, Ethan. I understand that I have been deceived like a fool. The question now is, what do we do next?" His face shifted into an expression I remembered from his childhood when he had been caught stealing cookies before dinner, a mix of fear and calculation. "Mom, there is a misunderstanding. Yes, I got a job recently, but we are still recovering financially after a difficult period. We really need help." I stood up, surprised at how steady my body felt. "Ethan, I think we have said enough for today. You should go home," he hissed, desperation twisting his face. "You are abandoning your family when we need you the most. After everything we have done for you, keeping you in our lives, visiting when we can." I laughed, a sound that felt unfamiliar even to me. "Leave, Ethan. We will talk again when you are ready to tell the truth." I opened the door and waited. For a moment I thought he would refuse, that he would continue the act. But Ethan stepped past me. At the doorway he stopped, turned back, and looked at me with a threatening gaze. "You will regret this. You need us more than we need you." I closed the door without replying. His footsteps faded down the hallway. I leaned against the door, my heart pounding, but not from fear. For the first time in 6 long years, I felt something extraordinary. I felt strong. No longer a silently sacrificing mother. No longer a breathing automated teller machine. I was Lauren Smith, a woman reclaiming her own life. And that journey had only just begun. The confrontation with Ethan left me with a feeling that was both trembling and resolute. I had seen through his mask, the very mask I had willingly helped place over my own eyes for 6 years. But I knew I had only touched the surface. This deception ran much deeper, like an iceberg beneath the water. I needed to know the full truth before I could move forward. I found Victor Lang through a small advertisement in the local community newspaper, a retired private investigator, affordable, specializing in cases involving elderly clients. When I met him for the first time at a small diner near my home, he looked like a gentle grandfather. White hair, narrow eyes behind thick glasses, and a calm, warm voice. I explained from the beginning. I am not seeking revenge. I just need to understand the full extent of the lies so I can move forward. He nodded slowly and took careful notes. I understand, Mrs. Smith. You need closure and justice in your own way. 2 weeks later, Victor called me with an unusually serious tone. You should prepare yourself. We need to meet urgently. We met at a quiet cafe in downtown Providence. When I arrived, he was already seated in a corner, a thick brown file placed in front of him. He pushed it toward me and spoke softly. Open it. My hands trembled as I turned the first page. Sharp photographs of a luxurious seaside house in Newport appeared. A classic colonial-style home with a private dock and a wide yard overlooking the ocean. I recognized it immediately. This was the vacation house Ethan had mentioned in the messages. Victor pointed to the transfer date. This house was purchased just 3 months after your husband passed away. I turned the page. A copy of Michael's life insurance contract appeared. $750,000. According to the beneficiary information, it was split equally. 50% for me, 50% for Ethan. I should have received $375,000. But I had never seen a single cent. Victor handed me more documents. The power of attorney I had signed while hospitalized with severe pneumonia right after Michael's funeral. Ethan had used that document to transfer my entire share into an account he controlled. After that, he had forged my signature on multiple transactions. Victor hesitated, his voice lowering. Mrs. Smith, this is clear criminal fraud. The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Victor continued, gentle but firm. The apartment they claim to be renting, they actually own it outright, purchased with part of your insurance money. There was never any rent to pay. Sophia has not only been promoted, she also inherited a large sum from her grandmother 2 years ago. Ethan manages several investments. Their so-called temporary financial struggles are just a cover. Each word felt like a blow. Then Victor slid one final document toward me, proof that they were preparing to sell my own small apartment. The property had been transferred into Ethan's name through manipulated paperwork handled by Joseph Miller, the lawyer who managed Michael's estate and also Ethan's close friend. I sat there, staring at the documents in front of me, unable to believe it. For 6 years, I had lived in self-imposed poverty, working 3 jobs, skipping meals, cutting my medication in half, while my son lived in luxury, using the very insurance money Michael had intended to protect me. His money. The money that should have allowed me to live comfortably in my old age, stolen right under my nose. Victor looked at me with concern. Mrs. Smith, are you all right? I looked up, my voice trembling but steady. I am better than I have been in years, Mr. Lang. For the first time, I am seeing clearly. He nodded, his eyes filled with respect. What will you do now? I closed the file. My hands no longer trembled. Whatever it takes to take back what is mine. The invisible woman of the past 6 years was becoming visible again. And she was no longer afraid. She was angry, a clean-wrecked anger filled with determination. I left the cafe under the gray sky of Rhode Island. But inside me, for the first time in a very long time, there was light. Not fragile hope, but real strength. The strength of a woman who had decided she would never bow her head again. Here is your translation, carefully optimized for natural grammar, emotional fidelity, and clear pacing for voice AI. TTS-friendly English. With Victor Lang's thick case file in my hands, I no longer wanted to wait even a single day. I drove straight home, sat down at my kitchen table under the warm yellow light, and began searching. I typed into Google Elder Financial Abuse Lawyer, Rhode Island. The first name that appeared was Douglas Freeman, a silver-haired attorney who specialized in cases involving financial abuse of the elderly. His website stated clearly, "We protect those who have been betrayed by their own family." That sentence felt like it spoke directly into my heart. I called immediately. 2 days later, I sat in his office in downtown Providence, a warm, oak-paneled room with certificates and family photos hanging on the walls. Douglas Freeman looked at me through his gold-rimmed glasses. His voice was calm yet firm. "Mrs. Smith, I have reviewed the documents Mr. Lang sent. You have an extremely strong case. Fraud, forgery, asset misappropriation. Your son could be facing several years in prison." The word prison tightened my chest. Despite everything that had happened, the thought of Ethan in handcuffs still caused a sharp pain. I whispered, "Is there another way? I do not want to completely destroy him." Douglas nodded and leaned forward slightly. "We can begin with civil action. We will demand full restitution, transfer of properties, and compensation for emotional damages. This will give him a chance to avoid criminal prosecution if he cooperates." I nodded. Relief mixed with fear. That is the direction I want. In the weeks that followed, we worked like two warriors. Douglas helped me organize everything. Bank statements proving I had transferred nearly $50,000 from my modest income over 5 years. Full printouts of WhatsApp messages filled with cruel mockery. Forged power of attorney documents. Photos of the Newport house and the so-called rented apartment that was actually their property. Each time I opened a new document, I felt a sharp sting. The words milk, the old cow appeared again, forcing me to pause, take a deep breath, and remind myself, this is no longer about mother and son. This is about justice. But I was not only gathering evidence, I was also changing myself step by step, steady and real. I received an offer to become a full-time teacher at a prestigious private school in Providence. My salary increased by 40%. For the first time in years, I had full health insurance. I joined a fitness class at the local community center, gentle sessions with other seniors, where I slowly regained strength in my legs and in my spirit. And most importantly, I began seeing Dr. Levine, a therapist specializing in family trauma. In our second session, she told me, "What you have experienced is a profound betrayal. Feeling grief, anger, and confusion at the same time is completely normal." I admitted, "What is strange is that alongside the pain, I am beginning to feel free." Dr. Levine smiled. "You are reclaiming your autonomy. After years of being controlled by their story and their needs, you are returning to yourself." Meanwhile, Ethan and Sophia began to panic. My phone would not stop ringing. Their messages shifted from concern to desperation and then to threats. "Mom, please call us. We are worried sick about you. Lauren, if you are upset, just say it. We are family. The electricity is about to be cut. Ava and Noah are suffering. This silence is immature. If you do not respond, we will have to request a wellness check." Wellness check. Those 2 words sent a chill down my spine. In America, the police can knock on your door simply because someone reports that an elderly woman living alone is not responding. But I understood their intention clearly. They were not worried about me. They were worried about the money flow that had been cut off. I only replied twice briefly, "I am fine. I need space right now." After that, I let everything go to voicemail. With every new message, I felt it more clearly than ever. They did not care about my health. They only cared about my wallet. I sat in my small apartment looking at the pile of evidence on the table. And for the first time, I truly smiled. Not a forced smile anymore, but the smile of a woman who had decided she would no longer be a victim. I was prepared. I was stronger. And I was ready for the greatest confrontation of all, the one where this time I would be in control. My story was entering its most dramatic chapter, and I was no longer afraid. I had prepared everything carefully. Douglas Freeman advised that surprise would be our strongest weapon, and I agreed. Instead of sending cold legal documents, I sent Ethan a short message. "I want the whole family to come for dinner this Saturday at 6 in the evening. I have important news to share." Just seconds later, the reply came, "We will be there. So glad you are feeling better, Mom." In his eagerness for the money flow to return, he did not realize that the power had completely shifted. This time, the predator had become the prey. That evening, my small apartment looked completely different. I had rearranged the furniture, added a few decorations from a thrift store, and hung paintings I had kept hidden for years. This space was finally mine, and I had changed too. I cut my hair into a modern short style. I wore a simple navy blue dress that carried quiet confidence. My posture was straighter, my shoulders no longer hunched forward. The invisible woman of the past 6 years was gone. In her place stood Lauren Smith, a woman reclaiming herself. At exactly 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw them all standing in the hallway, Ethan, Sophia, Ava, and Noah. They looked at me with obvious surprise. "Mom, you look different," Ethan said, glancing around the apartment. Sophia forced a warm smile. "Your new job must be treating you well." I simply smiled and led them to the dining table, which I had carefully arranged with candles and fresh flowers. Throughout dinner, their behavior was fascinating to watch. Ethan praised every dish. Sophia asked about my health with exaggerated concern. They kept exchanging glances, searching for the right moment to bring up the financial issue, the real purpose of the evening. Ava and Noah were, as always, glued to their phones. I reached out calmly but firmly and took them away. "No phones at the table tonight. We have an important family matter to discuss." Ethan seized the opportunity immediately. "Speaking of family, you look healthy and successful, Mom. Your new job must pay well, right?" I answered with quiet mystery. "I am exploring new opportunities." Sophia leaned forward, her voice sweet and calculated. "Where exactly are you working?" I smiled lightly. "Here and there." Then I turned to my grandchildren. "Ava, Noah, could you help me bring the coffee from the kitchen?" In the kitchen, I took out an old photo album and opened it. Photos of me taking them to the zoo when they were little appeared. "Do you remember I used to take you every month? You loved feeding the giraffes." Their faces softened with distant memories. Noah asked quietly, "Why did you stop visiting us?" I answered gently. "Did your parents tell me to stop?" Their confused expressions said everything. Back at the table, I served the coffee. Then calmly, I placed a thick file beside my plate. "Before we continue, I want to record this conversation." I set my phone on the table and turned on the recorder. For legal protection for all of us. Ethan's coffee cup froze midair. "Record? What are you talking about, Mom?" I opened the file and arranged the documents neatly. Bank statements showing the transfers, copies of forged insurance documents, photos of the Newport house, the apartment they claimed to rent, printed WhatsApp messages. For the past 5 years, I began my voice steady but strong. I believed my life had to be sacrificed to help my struggling son. I worked multiple jobs at nearly 70 years old. I skipped meals. I cut back on medication, all to send whatever I could. I pressed play. Sophia's voice filled the silent room. "Milk the old cow as long as she still gives milk." Then Ethan's laughter followed. Meanwhile, I continued pointing to the documents you lived in. 2 properties hid $375,000 of your father's insurance money and planned to sell this apartment, which legally belongs to me. I turned to Ava and Noah. Their faces had gone pale, truly shocked. "Did your parents ever tell you that I chose not to see you, or were you deceived as well?" Ava began to cry softly. I continued, my voice still steady despite my pounding heart. "Now I want to discuss how you plan to return $642,530 that legally belongs to me, plus interest and emotional damages." Ethan started to stand, but I cut him off. "Your lawyer has been notified. My lawyer is waiting for a confirmation call before 9 tonight to ensure I am safe. If he does not hear from me, he will file full criminal charges tomorrow morning." A deadly silence fell over the room. Noah's fork dropped to the floor with a sharp sound. The air froze. Ethan recovered first. His voice trembled, then turned angry. "This is insane. You are taking everything out of context." Sophia stiffened. "You spied on us, hired a detective, Lauren. I did not think you would sink this low." I remained still, letting their denial echo into emptiness. Then I pressed play again. "Milk the old cow as long as she still gives milk." "That was just a joke," Sophia snapped, her voice breaking. "You had no right to see that." "Exactly," I replied softly. "I had no right to know what you truly thought of me." Ethan switched to his familiar tone of regret. "Mom, we made mistakes. Yes, we had everything while you struggled." I interrupted him. "While you bought a beachfront house with your father's insurance money. Took vacations while I cleaned houses on weekends just to send money." Ava looked up, tears streaming. "Grandma, Did you really work 3 jobs to send us money while Mom and Dad said you were too busy to visit? The shock in her voice confirmed everything. Noah turned to his father, his face flushed with anger. You said Grandma was selfish, that she did not care about us. You said she had plenty of money but refused to help. Ethan's face turned pale. Sophia cut in quickly, her sweetness now poisonous. Lauren, clearly there has been a misunderstanding. Please stop, I raised my hand. I have documentation of every transaction, every forged signature, every fraudulent transfer. The insurance company has confirmed the policy was illegally redirected. Ethan stood up abruptly, desperation in his eyes. You cannot prove anything. Your word against ours. I slid another paper across the table. That is why I requested handwriting analysis on the forged documents. The results came yesterday. He glanced at it, then looked away. Defeat was beginning to show on his face. This does not have to become a legal nightmare, I continued. My lawyer has prepared a settlement agreement that allows you to avoid criminal charges. Ethan's voice cracked. You are suing your own son, your own family. For the first time that evening, I let my emotions show. You talk about family. When did you treat me like family, Ethan? When you mocked me in your messages, when you hid your father's insurance money, when you drove me to exhaustion while you went on vacations, I turned to my grandchildren, whose world was collapsing before their eyes. I never abandoned you. I was pushed out of your lives deliberately while being used as a financial source. Suddenly, Ava stood up, walked around the table, and hugged me tightly. The hug I had waited for so many years. I am so sorry, Grandma, she sobbed. I did not know anything. That warmth broke me. As I held her, tears streamed down my face. In that moment, I realized what I had truly lost was not just money or truth, but a genuine connection that had been deliberately severed. The settlement papers will arrive tomorrow, I said, over Ava's shoulder, looking directly at Ethan. Choose wisely. The room sank into heavy silence. This time, no one had anything left to deny. The game was over. And I, the woman who had once been invisible, was finally seen. The weeks after that confrontation felt like a storm sweeping through whatever remained of our family. Douglas Freeman filed the settlement documents exactly as promised, giving Ethan and Sophia 30 days to respond before we proceeded with criminal prosecution. The atmosphere in their home began to crack. I caught fragments through angry messages they accidentally sent to me, then quickly deleted. One late evening, about a week later, my phone rang. It was Sophia. I hesitated for a few seconds, then answered. Her voice came through no longer sweet and fake, but filled with anger and the haze of alcohol. This was all Ethan's idea. The insurance money, the forged documents, I knew nothing. I just thought you were wealthy and liked helping. I remained silent. She continued, her words stumbling over each other. He gambles. He had an affair with Jessica last year. You have to tell your lawyer that I am not involved. My career will be destroyed if this becomes public. The bank has very strict ethics rules. I said nothing. Her panic grew. Please, I cannot lose my job. Finally, I spoke one short sentence. I will consider your request. Then I hung up. I made no promises. I understood her strategy, clearly shifting all the blame onto her husband to save herself. But I was no longer someone who could be manipulated. The most unexpected development came from Ava and Noah. One Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, my 2 grandchildren stood there looking lost and exhausted. Ava's eyes were red. Noah kept his head down. Grandma, can we talk? Ava asked softly. About everything. We sat around the kitchen table with cups of hot chocolate. They told me everything. How they had been slowly separated from me through subtle excuses. Dad always said you were too busy for us, Noah said. When we asked to visit, he said you refused. Ava added, Mom said your apartment was not safe because you were hoarding things. She said you had mental problems and could not have visitors. I nearly choked. I had what Ava lowered her head. We believed them because they are our parents. Their visits became more regular. Each time they came, I learned more about the toxic environment they had grown up in. The pressure to maintain appearances, the normalization of lies. A system of values centered only on money and status. I listened. I held them. And slowly I began rebuilding the bridges that had been destroyed. But the true climax came just days before the settlement deadline. Ava and Noah arrived unexpectedly on a rainy evening, their faces wet with tears. "Everything is falling apart," Grandma Ava sobbed. "Dad moved into a hotel. Mom is talking about moving to Chicago. They are fighting all the time about money and blaming each other." Noah looked at me, his voice trembling. "Dad could go to prison." "Right. If he goes to prison, what will happen to us?" The question hung in the heavy air. Yes, if I pursued criminal prosecution, Ethan could face prison. I had avoided thinking about it for months, but now it stood clearly in front of me. These two innocent children, manipulated, betrayed, stripped of trust, would bear the consequences. I pulled them both into my arms, feeling their bodies shaking with fear. They had already lost so much. Their sense of safety, their trust, the very structure of family that children need most. That night after they left, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the calendar marked with the deadline. 3 days left. I had to instruct Douglas on how to proceed. The choice stood before me: justice or compassion, full restitution or preserving a fragile connection, legal victory or healing for my grandchildren. I had spent months building a case strong enough to reclaim everything that had been stolen. But was I willing to pay the emotional cost of winning? Could I watch Ava and Noah grow up with the fear that their grandmother had sent their father to prison? The morning of the deadline arrived with light rain in Providence, the same weather as the day I fell on the school steps months ago when I was invisible to everyone around me. Today, as I stepped out of the taxi in front of Douglas Freeman's office, the driver insisted on holding an umbrella over me all the way to the door, a small, warm gesture that nearly brought me to tears. Inside the conference room, the tension was thick. Ethan sat hunched, looking 10 years older than before. Sophia maintained composure, though her hair was disheveled. Ava and Noah sat quietly in the corner beside an elderly woman I did not recognize at first. "This is my mother," Eleanor, Sophia introduced reluctantly. "She wanted to be here." The 82-year-old woman approached me with a cane. "Mrs. Smith, I did not know anything about what my daughter has done. When I found out, I insisted she come here and accept whatever terms you propose." I nodded, surprised by this unexpected ally, and signaled Douglas to begin. He presented the documents, his voice clear and unyielding. "Lauren Smith has sufficient evidence to pursue criminal charges against Ethan Carter for fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of over $600,000, as well as elder financial abuse and abuse of power of attorney." Ethan's shoulders sank further. Douglas continued, "However, she is willing to forego criminal prosecution under the following non-negotiable conditions." The settlement was detailed down to the last number. Ethan must immediately sell the Newport house and transfer all proceeds to me. The so-called rented apartment must be sold within 6 months, with 70% of its value going to me. He must pay an additional $2,000 per month for 5 years. I would have guaranteed visitation with my grandchildren, including 1 month every summer. And there was a conduct clause. Any attempt to defame me to the children or the community would result in immediate reinstatement of criminal prosecution. Faced with real prison time, Ethan signed without protest. Sophia tried to argue about selling the apartment, but one stern look from her mother silenced her instantly. Ethan finally looked up, his voice hollow. "Why are you doing this, Mom? You could send me to prison. You could destroy our lives completely." I looked at my son carefully and saw something I had never truly seen before. Fear. Not just fear of prison, but a deeper, older fear. The fear of losing the image of the good son he had built in my eyes. "I am not doing this for you," I said calmly. "I am doing this for my grandchildren and for myself." Spending years in court reliving every betrayal would keep me trapped in the past. I choose to move forward, but on my terms. I turn to Ava and Noah. "And I do this because, despite everything, I believe you deserve a chance to grow up understanding what family truly means. Not money, not lies, but love and honesty." When everyone left, the conference room fell silent. I stood there looking out at the rain through the window, and for the first time in 6 long years I felt light. Not because of victory, but because I had chosen the path of compassion, the harder path, but the right one. 6 months after that fateful settlement signing, I moved into the beachfront house in Newport, the very house Ethan once hid from me, the one he planned to sell for profit. The irony could not have been clearer. Every morning I wake up, open my bedroom window, and look out at the gray-blue ocean of Rhode Island. I listen to the steady rhythm of the waves and remind myself this is not a trophy. This is justice, something I fought a long time to reclaim. With the money returned to me, I did more than secure my financial future. I created a warm and welcoming space for Ava and Noah. They now spend most weekends with me. They stay overnight. They cook with me. They tell me stories about school. And slowly they are learning again how to trust an adult, a grandmother who will never abandon them. I also began a new journey. I founded a group called Second Chances After 60, a small community for older women in the New England area who have experienced financial or emotional abuse from their own families. We meet monthly at the local community center. We share our stories. We learn how to protect our bank accounts. We recognize signs of manipulation. And most importantly, we learn how to love ourselves again. Caroline Hayes, the wife of Dr. Elena Ramirez, often joins us, bringing practical advice from her experience in banking. It is a small group, but every woman who walks out of those meetings carries a little more light. Ethan now works as a teaching assistant at a local community college after losing his position at the brokerage firm. He has started therapy, a slow, painful, but necessary process. We are still rebuilding our relationship step by step. Not immediate forgiveness, but honest conversations, sincere apologies, and moments where he admits he was wrong. Sophia divorced Ethan and moved to another state. I no longer keep in contact with her, but her mother, Eleanor Brooks, has unexpectedly become a friend. The 82-year-old woman often calls to check on me, sends homemade cookies, and sometimes visits Newport to sit with me on the porch watching the ocean. She once said, "I cannot change what my daughter has done, but I can be here to help repair a part of it." One sunny Sunday afternoon, I sat on the balcony with Ava, helping her with her math homework. The ocean sparkled under the sunlight. The wind carried the scent of salt. Ava looked up and asked softly, "Grandma, do you regret not sending Dad to prison?" I paused, holding my pen, and looked at her for a long moment. Justice and revenge are not the same, my dear. Sometimes true victory is not about destroying the person who hurt you, but about building something better from the ruins. I pointed to a newly framed photo on the living room wall. It showed Ava, Noah, and me at the ceremony where I received my personal finance certificate. Beside, it was a plaque engraved with the words I had chosen as my motto: "It is never too late to rediscover your worth." Ava smiled, her eyes shimmering with tears. She hugged me tightly. And in that moment, I knew that even though the road ahead would still carry scars, I had found myself again, a Lauren Smith who is strong, free, and full of hope. Thank you for listening to my story all the way to the end. If you have ever experienced the pain of betrayal from your own family, or if you simply need a reminder that you deserve love and respect, please share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters. And if this story has touched your heart, do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you will not miss other life-changing stories. Let us grow stronger together. See you in the next video. I wish you a peaceful day and a life full of hope.